his job, putting Virginia families at risk.
Tonight, the stunning and deeply personal moment at the White House. President Trump's chief of staff, General John Kelly, suddenly coming into the briefing room. What he said about President Trump's phone call to the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. Also tonight, the very rare move from a former president, George W. Bush, who has shied away from the public eye, now breaking his silence tonight on what he's seeing in this country. Also breaking the state of emergency in Florida, the white nationalist leader set to speak, and then you'll see what happened today. Just in tonight, the Las Vegas investigation, what we've now learned about those 12 minutes. New reporting tonight, what happened inside the cockpit as that passenger plane came so close to the tower. Breaking now what the LAPD has just revealed about Harvey Weinstein. And will your city win? 50,000 Amazon jobs, salaries of $100 grand. And how far will your city go?
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. And we begin with that deeply personal moment at the White House today. Chief of Staff General John Kelly coming into the briefing room, defending President Trump's phone call to the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. And in doing so, General Kelly talking about the loss of his own son right there in Afghanistan. General Kelly revealing the president asked him, "What do I say when I call?" And then the general blasted the congresswoman who said the family was offended by the president's call. That family has said the same thing. General Kelly did not address today, though, whether he was bothered by the president first bringing up those solemn calls early this week, comparing himself to his predecessors. ABC senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega leading us off.
This was John Kelly, not just as chief of staff, but as a retired four-star general and a father whose own son Robert was killed in 2010 when he stepped on a landmine in Afghanistan. Kelly says he personally counseled President Trump on how to call the grieving families of fallen soldiers.
There's no perfect way to make that phone call. When I took this job and talked to President Trump about how to do it, my first recommendation was he not do it. Because it's not the phone call that parents, family members are looking forward to. It's nice to do, in my opinion, in any event. He asked me about previous presidents, and I said I can tell you that President Obama, who was my commander-in-chief when I was on active duty, did not call my family. That was not a criticism. That was just to simply say, I don't believe President Obama called. That's not a negative thing.
Kelly says he and President Trump spoke before those calls to the families of the 4 special ops soldiers killed in Niger.
And he said to me, what do I say? I said to him, sir, there's nothing you can do to lighten the burden on these families. But let me tell you what I tell them. And let me tell you what my best friend, Joe Dunford, told me, because he was my casualty officer. He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about, Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day.
The president did tell the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson that her husband knew what he was signing up for. But the president's message and how it was delivered did not sit well with Sergeant Johnson's mother, who told the Washington Post President Trump did disrespect my son and my daughter, and also me and my husband. And Democratic Florida Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, who also listened to that call on speakerphone, went public with her frustration.
He kept referring to him as your guy. He never called his name. So that was even more painful.
Today, Kelly defended his boss.
In his way, tried to express that opinion. He's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with. when his life was taken. That was the message. That was the message that was transmitted.
And he lashed out at the Congresswoman.
Stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred.
But Kelly did not address President Trump's role in this controversy, that he was the one who ignited the firestorm when he turned a question about those 4 fallen soldiers in Niger into a political swipe at his predecessors.
The traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls. A lot of them didn't make calls. I like to call when it's appropriate, when I think I'm able to do it.
And Cecilia Vega with us live from the White House tonight. And Cecilia, Chief of Staff John Kelly made it very clear how upset he was with that Congresswoman. Do we know if he was at all upset with the president earlier this week, who first brought up those very solemn calls that are often kept private, comparing himself to his predecessors?
Well, David, I'm told that John Kelly is indeed very angry, but his anger tonight is not directed at President Trump. It is indeed directed at Congresswoman Wilson and at the media for what this administration very much views as unfair attacks on this president. I'm told this was John Kelly's idea to come out and talk to these cameras today. He very much publicly wanted to address this, David.
He made that clear today. Cecilia Vega leading us off tonight. Cecilia, thank you. It was Monday in the Rose Garden when the president was asked about the deaths of 4 U.S. servicemen, part of a Green Beret team, all special ops, killed in an ambush in Niger. 12 days had already gone by with no comment from the president. It was then the president began to talk about those solemn phone calls. Well, tonight the Pentagon has revealed it has launched an official investigation. How did these 4 men die, and did they have the intelligence and the backup that they needed to get out? Here's ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross tonight.
The deadly ambush in this remote African village happened more than 2 weeks ago. But tonight, the Pentagon is still not providing a full and cogent narrative of how 4 American soldiers died after being attacked by an overwhelming force of more than 50 militants. Officials said the full investigation, only announced today, is still ongoing.
Sub-Saharan Africa is a very difficult place to operate. So we'll investigate this. We'll have conclusions, and those conclusions will be presented. I'm not prepared to go further.
2 key questions remain tonight. 1, did the unit have the proper advance intelligence and backup air and ground support in case something went wrong? Officials said the unit did not expect to be in combat.
Over the last 6 months, we have conducted 29 partnered patrols in this general area without contact of any kind.
A second question, did Sergeant LaDavid Johnson get left behind when the rest of the unit pulled out? His body was not recovered for at least 20 hours.
It took us a little while to do that. We didn't leave him behind, and we searched until we found him, and we brought him home.
U.S. forces have been in Niger for the last 4 years as the threat from this terror group has escalated, with its leader last year pledging allegiance to ISIS.
There's a reason we have U.S. Army soldiers there and not the Peace Corps, because we carry guns.
As controversy swirled over the ambush in Niger, the president was taking credit for U.S. victories against ISIS.
I totally changed the attitudes of the military, and they have done a fantastic job. Yeah, ISIS is now giving up. They're giving up. They're raising their hands. They're walking off. Nobody's ever seen that before.
Why did
and
that
that's
happen
good.
before?
Because you didn't have Trump as your president.
Brian Ross with us again tonight. And Brian, we took note that Senator John McCain said today that he may need a subpoena to get answers on Niger.
David, at one point, the senator told ABC News he did not think the administration was being upfront about what happened in Niger, even suggesting, as you say, that as chairman of the Armed Services Committee, he might issue a subpoena to get the information he wants and needs.
Brian Ross with us tonight. Brian, thank you. Meantime, after President Trump spoke about his predecessors earlier this week, 2 of them tonight are making rare public appearances. George W. Bush here in New York City, who has kept a very low profile since leaving office, now breaking his silence on what he's seeing in America today. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
George W. Bush has avoided politics since leaving office. But today, the former president seemed to throw down the gauntlet, warning of the rise of, quote, bullying and prejudice in America.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together.
The former president never mentioned the current president, but much of the speech seemed directly aimed at the words and policies of Donald Trump.
We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism. We've forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America.
And while Trump has been criticized for being slow to condemn racists, Bush drew a bright line.
Bigotry or white supremacy in any form is blasphemy against the American creed.
Former President Obama was also making a rare public appearance today, campaigning for Democratic candidates in New Jersey and Virginia.
Hello, everybody!
No mention of President Trump, but also no mistaking his target.
Some of the politics we see now, we thought we put that to bed. It's the 21st century, not the 19th century. Come on.
And John Carl with us live from the White House as well. And John, back to former President George W. Bush today, because on Russian meddling, he said the Russian government has made a project of turning Americans against each other.
Former President Bush really sounded the alarm on this, saying that Russian interference amounts to, quote, a sustained attempt by a hostile power to exploit our country's divisions. David?
John Carl with us tonight as well. Thank you, John. And you heard former President Bush there talking about racism and bigotry in this country. It came as there was a state of emergency in Florida as a white nationalist was about to take the stage. He was involved in the protests in Charlottesville, and he was about to talk in Gainesville, Florida. And you're about to see what happened next. Here's ABC's Victor Oquendo tonight.
White nationalist Richard Spencer booed from the moment he walked on stage at the University of Florida. The crowd standing and shouting, "Go home."
These students right behind me here chanting and booing the entire time.
Spencer, a key figure in Charlottesville.
We'll never back down.
Where we saw those haunting images and violent flashes. The Florida governor declaring a state of emergency in preparation for Spencer's speech today in Gainesville.
No Nazis, no KKK.
Hundreds of protesters gathering outside the site of the speech.
We need to show that UF, that Gainesville, that the state of Florida condemns Richard Spencer and his ideology.
The afternoon mostly peaceful. Then this flare-up. The crowd surrounding this man wearing a T-shirt covered in swastikas, his mouth bloody. Law enforcement working quickly to clear the scene. And on that stage, Spencer trying to speak through the noise, but the chants continuing, drowning him out.
Now it's time for me to speak. I'll stand here all day if I have to.
When he walked off the stage, Richard Spencer thanked the University of Florida. He said he was happy to be here and that he will continue his fight. David?
Victor Oquendo tonight. Victor, thanks. And next to the massacre in Las Vegas tonight, we have new reporting here about those fateful 12 minutes and when police finally arrived and which teams were actually able to get there first. ABC's Matt Gutman again tonight.
Tonight, new details about those 12 critical minutes as police responded to the Las Vegas rampage. ABC News has learned that there were police officers in the Mandalay Bay Hotel securing another event when Stephen Paddock opened fire. But the hotel complex is so vast that police say officers who were across the street at the country music concert got there faster, running through the streets in that rain of bullets.
One of the things that's most striking when you see this from the air is the vast distance from that suite up on the 32nd floor down to the concert venue down below.
By the time police arrived, the shooting had stopped. 12 minutes after security officer Jesus Campos was wounded and radioed for help. In his first interview, Campos telling Ellen DeGeneres that he'd been sent to investigate an open door in the stairwell.
As that door's closing and it's so heavy, it'll slam. I'm walking down this way, and I believe that's what caught the shooter's attention. As I was walking down, I heard rapid fire.
The gunman shooting through his hotel room door, hitting Campos in the leg. With this new timeline, the remaining mystery is why did Stephen Paddock do this? Now, police tell me that he was so secretive that we may never know. David.
Matt Gutman again tonight. Thank you, Matt. President Trump welcoming Puerto Rico's governor to the White House today, 4 weeks after the hurricane.